What up? This is Patrick Hayes, and in this video I want to talk about how to stop a negative thought spiral. So if anybody there has ever experienced or experienced on a regular basis a negative thought spiral where you're going along and then all of a sudden your mind just takes over and you go down this negative path of thinking and it leaves you off feeling really broken and weak and powerless. If you ever had that and you want to know how to stop that spiral from happening, this video will give you 5 steps to actually do that. And one of the reasons why it's so important for us to stop these negative spirals when they happen is because when we go down a negative thought spiral, we're basically harmonizing with a negative timeline. And then if we don't have the ability to stop ourselves from going down, we could be making all this progress on a particular path towards success, towards our goals, towards our dreams, towards becoming the person that we want to be. But then if we have this negative thought spiral, it takes us off of that path and puts us on a different path. And then we're required to do a positive thought spiral and get back into the positive frame in order to get back on our path. And if we're constantly doing that, then we're gonna have a very push-pull, wishy-washy path towards our goals, and we'll probably manifest a lot of things that we don't really wanna manifest. So the first step in stopping a negative thought spiral is being aware that you're having a negative thought spiral, being aware of the signs, of the red flags that are indicating to you that you may be starting to go down a negative thought spiral. There's a lot of different indications or red flags that could come up, but some of them are things like an anticipation of something negative to come. So say you're going to a particular house where you get triggered by people, or you're going to do a particular activity that sometimes you find yourself getting into trouble with, and you're having the thought, you notice yourself having a thought, oh, this is gonna suck, or this is like, I really don't wanna do this. These kinds of thoughts are premonitions. These kinds of thoughts are basically, it's like a negative priming. It's priming you for a negative experience. So if you notice these thoughts, this is an indicator like, oh, okay, I should be aware here, I should look out. And then further down the line, what often happens is something negative triggers you. You feel that trigger and you instantly just start going down this like thought spiral path where it's like popcorn oftentimes. Like the thoughts happen so quickly, pop, 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 and you can't control what's going on with your mind, and it's just negative thought, negative thought, negative thought, and you feel worse and worse and worse. So what to be aware of is in your feeling sense what's going on, because your feelings will always indicate you first before that kind of popcorn thing happens and let you know that maybe you've had some negative thoughts or you just have some negative beliefs in general that are kind of negatively priming you for the situation. So when you feel your emotions start to tighten, this is an indication that, listen, it's time to be careful right now. It's time to be very, very aware, right? So you want to be able to identify this, because if you don't identify it, if you're not aware as you're starting to go down this path, if you can't stop yourself and be like, whoa, wait a second, and actually have the thought or the awareness of, listen, I'm actually going down a negative thought spiral right now. If you don't have that awareness, then it may be way, way, way after the fact that you even realize, and you're like, oh gosh, I went unconscious, I don't know what happened there, right? So when you feel your emotions starting to go, so you have one, because it's oftentimes, it's like the straw that broke the camel's back, right? It's like this thing comes, and then this thing comes, and then this thing comes, and then all of a sudden 3 things hit at once and boom, you crumble, right? So it's like every time you feel a little bit of pressure, every time you feel a little bit of the stacking coming on, you want to be taking note of that. Oh, I'm feeling this pressure. Oh, I'm feeling this thing. It's coming on top of me. It's a negative thought. It's like kind of a negative residue or essence that I'm feeling around myself. And once you feel that, this is like, okay, I'm feeling this, and now it's time for me to clear this, right? So you can try to prevent it in advance. But when it breaks through and you start actually feeling like the earth slide out from underneath you, you start going down that negative thought spiral, this is when it's really important to take it to step 2. And step 2 is to interrupt the negative thought spiral with awareness, right? So step 1 is be aware of it. Be on the lookout for the signs, right? And it's really just like being aware in your body. When you feel your body start to tighten up, that's when it starts to to push your mind out away from your body and to spiral down this path, right? So you're aware of that. And when you are aware, then you interrupt that thought with awareness. You interrupt that thought spiral with awareness. And the way that I like to do this, there's a lot of ways you can do it, but the way I like to do it is I like to bring the awareness back into my body. Right? So if I notice, oh, pop, pop, oh no, I'm having all these negative thoughts, then I say, okay, come back into my body, and I start feeling my physical body. And I start narrating what's going on inside my physical body with my mind. See, because what happens when you go through a negative thought spiral is you have a negative emotion. These negative emotions trigger negative thoughts, and then these negative thoughts then seed new negative emotions, and it becomes this spiral that keeps pulling downward, right? So what you want to do is that when you feel yourself starting to go there, you want to interrupt it with awareness. Wait a second, I'm going down a negative thought spiral. Let me stop this right now. And how do you use your mind in a way where your mind isn't going to get propelled by that negative emotion? So what I do is I turn my mind back onto my body, and I say, oh, what am I feeling right now? This is interesting. What's going on? And I really start focusing on what I'm feeling, right? And a way of actually helping this sometimes can be to say it out loud. Because if you have a mind that is like going rapid fire at you, by saying something out loud, you kind of consolidate your thoughts into the expression of what you're saying. And so you can take your focus and put it on your body and say, wow, okay, I'm feeling like my solar plexus is really tight, and I'm feeling this desire to like shake around and go crazy. I'm feeling a tightness in my hands, my head's getting sweaty, my palms are getting sweaty, all these different things. But you can actually narrate it from a physiological perspective. And be careful not to narrate it from a psychological perspective or an emotional perspective, because by doing that, you might pull yourself back into the drama of like, oh, well, this person said this and now I'm angry about it, now I'm frustrated. So you don't want to get into it on that level. You want to get into it in a physiological sense, saying like, oh, my chest feels tight, my legs feel wobbly. Actually get into the physiological space of it, right? Because then this doesn't pull us back into the drama. Now, once you've done this, you have enough awareness to actually interrupt the thought. Then the next step is to accept that you're having these feelings, right? Accept that, because one of the major issues is that if we're starting to have a negative spiral and we have these, negative emotions and feelings going on, oftentimes we can get angry at ourselves for feeling it. Like maybe we've been doing so well that we hadn't spun out in a really long time. We've been on an upward spiral, and then we notice that we're going down a negative spiral. It can be like, oh shit, like I can't believe I'm doing this again. You get really frustrated with yourself. Well, this is the last thing you want to do. So what you want to do is you want to accept. So step number 3 is to accept what is going on. When you feel those feelings, accept the feelings. Now don't get into it, like I said, in the emotional or psychological sense, but just on the physiological sense. Accept that physiologically you're feeling tight hands, and focus on that. Have your attention saying, I'm feeling tight hands and I'm accepting this. It's okay that I'm feeling tight in my chest. It's okay that I'm feeling wobbly in my legs. Let it be okay that you're feeling that. Don't put any extra meaning onto it. Just let it be okay and say, everything's okay. I am just feeling tightness in my chest. I'm just feeling tightness in my hands. And track the feelings that you're feeling and focus your mind on that so that your mind doesn't get carried away by the negative feelings. And once you have accepted it, appreciation. So you may be saying, well, how am I supposed to appreciate that I'm feeling negative? Well, it's not necessarily that you're appreciating, say, the pain, but you're appreciating that you have the awareness to be aware of the negative feelings that you're feeling. You're appreciating that you have the awareness to interrupt the negative thought spiral. Because if you've made it this far, you've actually made it to the point where you're bringing awareness, you're bringing consciousness to this situation, and you're not just being carried away by a negative thought spiral. So you can be really appreciative in that moment that you're actually having the awareness to interrupt yourself and not going down that spiral. So you're feeling the feelings, you're like tightness in my chest, tightness in my hands. Once you've interrupted that and you're not spinning too far, right? You can feel that like you're containing your consciousness within your body and not letting it run away with you. You could say, feeling tightness in my hands, I'm feeling tightness in my chest, and I'm so grateful, I'm so appreciative that I'm able to be aware of this. This is a step forward. Even if I've been doing so well and I haven't spiraled out in a long time, it's okay. This is actually a step forward, because in this situation, I'm growing, because this is a situation that if I wasn't aware, I would have spun out in, right? But I am aware, so I'm growing. And a good thing that you can, or good understanding that you can bring into this that can help you not spin out or have less temptation to go into those thoughts is that when you're in a negative vibration, when you're feeling a negative vibe, any of the thoughts that you have cannot be trusted, right? You cannot trust a thought in a negative vibe. Now, I made a whole video on the idea of truth being that which is empowering. It's a video, it's called High Vibe as a Way of Life. I'll put a link right here. Now, if you watch this video, this will really break down to you why negative vibration thoughts are actually untrue. right? They're actually not even true. You might say like, well, what are you talking about? What if I find out some bad news? The bad news is true. You're like, yes, maybe the fact of it's true, but your interpretation of it, if you're interpreting it in a way that's putting you in a negative vibe, or is that's taking energy from you, or is making you more disempowered, then there is a truer interpretation of that same fact. And I get really into detail about this in that video, so go watch that video. So in understanding that, then you know that if you're having a negative feeling, if you're feeling negative emotions, that those thoughts can't be trusted. So you can just think of them, they're rubbish. They mean absolutely nothing, right? So no matter how convincing they may seem, you can always rest in the knowing that if you're in a negative state, that the thoughts that you're having are rubbish. There's no point in even like giving them the time of day, right? Just, it's like a dog barking at like a phantom, right? It's not real. So you can just let it go. Okay, so we had the negative signs, right? We're aware of the negative signs. We're being aware when negative thoughts start to come up, or we're starting to tip the first domino, right? We have that awareness. 2, we bring that awareness in and interrupt that negative pattern from going forward, right? And we have 3, acceptance. We're accepting that we've had this experience, that we're feeling negative, right? But it's okay, right? We forgive ourselves for it. So we have acceptance. Then we have appreciation. We have the appreciation that we were able to make it this far, that we were able to have this awareness, that we were able to interrupt it. We insert appreciation for that there. And then the fifth step is to bring something to the table that you want to experience, right? Bring the kind of vibration forward that is, in a sense, like the antidote to it. But here's the key. You don't want to think of it in a sense of you're trying to get rid of the negative emotion. You're not trying to get rid of the uncomfortable feeling, right? Because if you get in the space of like, okay, now I want to get rid of this feeling, then you're actually creating conflict within you. You start fighting with that feeling, and that creates more conflict, and then that resistance, that inner resistance, starts concentrating and gets worse. So the idea here is that you're not trying to get rid of it, but think of it, it's like an alchemical cauldron, right? And you have this poison in the cauldron. The cauldron's, spinning, the poison is spinning around in the cauldron. So what you do is you add another ingredient to the cauldron. Instead of trying to dump the cauldron out to get rid of this, you add another ingredient to the cauldron. And that ingredient can have an alchemical response that neutralizes it, right? But you're not trying to get rid of it. You're just bringing something else to the table. So what do you bring to the table? Well, you can bring a whole bunch of different things. Relaxation, appreciation. You see, you've already started to do it with step 4, like by appreciating. Appreciation, something you can bring to the table. Relaxation, self-love. And as you get more evolved, or as you get more creative with this, ideally what you should be doing is, if you have regular triggers, things that trigger you on a regular basis, you should spend time on like the anti-frequency of those things. So whether say it's disempowerment, or say it's frustration, or whatever it is, what you should do is that during your meditations or during your practice time, you can get into a space, into an energetic feeling space of feeling empowered, or feeling excited or patient instead of frustrated, right? The anti-frequency to frustrated. You get into that space and you get to know that vibration. You get to know it because you get into that space consciously on a regular basis, and then you have certain thought forms that are associated with that space, right? You develop a relationship with this space. And so then when you find yourself in a situation where you're being triggered into a lower state, into an old pattern, that you've built a relationship with the anti-frequency to that. And this becomes like the alchemical solvent that dissolves the negative frequency, right? So what you do is you develop your relationship with it, and then when you go through this and you're at step number 5, where you're realizing, okay, now I've appreciated it, I've accepted it, it's going on, now what do I bring in? You already have something to bring in. You've already experienced, you've already steeped in this vibration, and you could say, I'm going to call upon this thing, right? You can close your eyes and you can think about that thing. You can say those couple words, those anchor words that associate you with the prevailing logic that is the anti-logic to whatever negative thought form or negative belief that you may have that's perpetuating the negative frequency, right? You bring in that other form, and then you just let them kind of sit together. You focus on the other one. You don't try to push the negative vibration out. You just focus on the positive vibration. You focus on those other things. And as you focus on it, it will eventually dissolve the negative frequency. So these are the 5 steps for being able to stop a negative spiral. This is something that's been absolutely crucial in my life, and it's something that I employ every time that I start feeling something coming up. and it proves to be really, really successful when I actually dedicate myself fully to it. You know, and if something's new to you, if you haven't experienced a certain kind of trigger, it may take a few times for you to actually identify the trigger, come up with the anti-frequency, steep in that anti-frequency for long enough that you have access to it when you're in more of a triggered state. But it's something that's absolutely worth the work. So thanks so much for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the comments below. If you'd like me to expand upon this topic or cover something else about this topic, go ahead and put that in the comments below too. If this video was useful for you, or there's anyone in your life that you think could benefit from this video, please share it with that person. I would really, really appreciate that. So thanks so much for tuning in. This is Patrick Hayes. Like, subscribe, and I will talk to you next time. One love.